בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. We have a delicious white chocolate chip challah. I'm sure
one of a few rare challahs in the freezer.
Yes.
Professor Rodolfo should come to Kansas City to try challah. When we do it, we'll have two challahs, one for everybody, one for him, one for everybody else. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen.
Did you ask them about making challah in our size, congregation size, instead of the half, making a quarter challah?
Can't tell which one's chocolate chips if you're getting it. Okay. You just let me know anytime you want me to do back the hollows I'm storing.
Then you know, we're still good.
Don't you need room in
Shalom,
your?
Rabbi.
¿Qué tal?
Hola.
For the hot pepper. Yes, it is.
Who do you have here today?
We have, let's see, we have Gary, Rodolfo from Mexico, and George from Panama.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Others will join, I'm sure.
Your August 12th is reserved.
Thank you. You need to talk so I can get an invitation. You have me doing. Thank you for noticing. Thank you. Yes.
Is that a
Really?
picture taken by the new Webb telescope?
Yes.
So are we supposed to get this show on the road eventually?
Yep.
We are waiting for Godot.
This sangria, if you chill it in the fridge and serve it over ice at dinner, maybe even, and you don't even have to put any more fruit in it. It's really good.
It is.
And if you put fruit, you're righteous. Increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. Wow. Okay, now we move to.
Salam, Rabbi.
¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo anda, don Elías?
Muy bien, ¿usted qué tal?
Vamos acá. To mute here. Okay. Well, I am glad Pat left the right wing. He have left the right wing. As far as I'm concerned, you are on the far right. But this, this is gonna. We don't talk about politics this year, but this election is gonna be very interesting. Because I'll prove that I do not vote around party lines, but rather my conscience. Don't mumble. Okay, I'll try not to. That I will vote my conscience, I'll vote my conscience, not party lines, or not even my wallet this time.
She is an avid Trump supporter.
How come? How come? Pam.
And they were asking because they're in such terrible shape that they wanted for support by sending $500 campaign costs.
Should. Well, okay. So before we start the service, anybody has anything good to share? Any good news? Yes, ma'am.
Cucumber vines are abundant, and we donated about 10 pounds of cucumbers to the food pantry.
Very nice. That is very nice. And sir?
My tomatoes and cucumbers are working this year, but what I've done for the world is I participated last night in a Braver Angels national debate on gun violence. And it was very good. I didn't contribute much actually, because they didn't call on me to give my little talk. But they had some really good speakers, particularly on the pro guns make people safer. It wasn't that they convinced me, but they had very good speakers and on all subjects. And I thought it was very good, the fact that you can actually have a decent conversation with data. I'm liking that.
Good. Well, I'll relate to you that on Sunday I participated in this international interfaith, and I thought it was very good. I did not sound like myself. I sounded considerate, kind, and caring.
And not only that, but you could actually understand what you said.
And what I say is, once you can fake sincerity, you can fake anything. No, I thought it was, the truth is, it was kind of easy. First of all, there was no debate. It wasn't about winning or losing. But easy to debate when I was the only professional there. I think nobody else was a professional minister. So none of them went to school to learn how to speak.
The man from India did.
Oh, he did?
Yes. I thought it was, yes.
No.
Yes, he was one of my favorites. Yeah.
And Denise was rooting for everybody else but me. Anyway, and then the other thing is, a far lesser note, I went with Joyce to an FBI event that I thought was kind of disappointing about how to active shooter. It felt to me it was very, very low level and mostly was intended to justify the actions of, if you need help, don't call the FBI, call 911. Oh, thank you. And then when the police shows up, if there is an active shooter, they won't care about you. You can be sitting there bleeding to death. They don't care. First, they need to take care of the shooter. Okay, that's fine. But it felt to me like it was meant to prevent people from suing the police down the road. That's how it felt to me.
What you need to do is to call the emergency, and then when they don't answer, call 988.
That's nice.
The new suicide prevention.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, even the material they had was talk about being mumbly. Like they had these videos trying to explain to you what you need to do in the case of an active shooter, but instead of stopping the sound and everything so you can focus on what the lesson is, still the shooting happened from behind and they're talking over it. I don't know, was not good. But Joyce has a few ideas about some weakness that she thinks we have here. And the one idea she had, which I think that is really relevant, is the one thing that people could learn here, because it would be useful not only here. the one thing people could learn that would not only be helpful in the case of active shooter, but here as well is if somebody is shot or is bleeding, how do you stop the bleed? How do you make a tourniquet? That kind of thing. I thought that was a good idea, and I said that I was in favor of it, and I would be talking about it. Yes, sir.
Be interested in holding a class here for that kind of training.
Absolutely.
If I can get the people to do it, because they're kind of busy right now, but I do know some people that can actually train. They do basic first aid. They do how to put on a tourniquet, how to put on.
Joyce can do that. That's what she said. So I don't want to take it away from her.
That's perfectly fine.
Will they teach you one I-5?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would think
That's pretty standard.
that our concerns about, I thought about it, and I think the Jewish congregation having services in a Presbyterian church, nobody would think to look for us on Friday.
Ted said something that maybe is prophetic. He said, Rabbi, they're apples and they're oranges. You're a grape.
Well, nobody thought that kid was gonna walk into the home. And the result of that is this massive screw up, right?
Right. That's so true. But, it's complicated because
You can't rule it out.
obviously you can't. Right. You obviously can't rule out. But on the other hand, I don't think the chance of it happening are so small that does it warrant living in fear? And, I have just high hopes that Hawk comes packing heat. That's the only hope I have. But other than that, anyway, I don't know. That's it. Anybody else? Is anything else? Anybody online? No? The online people? No. Oh, I already have 8 people. Good. In that case, we will open the service with page 3. Now we turn to page 7 for candle lighting. Do I have a volunteer, or do I have to volunteer someone? Okay, I'm going to volunteer Denise. You want to do it, Pam? Pam will do it. I want to take it away from her. And even though I'm not the Pope and you're not my niece, even though you're the niece, we don't want to be accused of nepotism here. I'm on fire today.
Come, let us welcome Shabbat. May its radiance warm our hearts as we kindle these tapers.
Light is the symbol of God's presence in our life.
Light is the symbol of the holiness within each of us. The human spirit is the light of God.
Light is the symbol of the Torah's teachings. The commandment is the lamp, and the Torah is the light.
Light is the symbol of Israel's mission. As it is written, I have made you a covenant people to serve as a light to the nations.
Therefore, in the spirit of our ancient tradition, that hallows and unites Israel in all lands and all ages, we kindle the lights of Shabbat. Light them first. Light them first.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshenu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu v'havitner shel Shabbat. We praise our eternal God, creator of the universe, who holds our lives through laws and ethical teachings. We are mindful of these timeless values as we kindle the lights of Shabbat.
May God bless us with Shabbat joy. May God bless us with Shabbat holiness. May God bless us with Shabbat peace. Amen. Page 76 for the fourth service. Gather together now that the shadows of evening fall, we open our hearts to the sweet and comforting influences of our worship. We're thankful for countless blessings, for the ceaseless flow of God's goodness to us. Every day we receive the fullness of this bounty. When we are tried by sorrow or times of anguish, it is not that we have been forsaken. The Eternal One always is with us, guiding us along the path of life. May we be grateful for having been granted the strength to endure our trials, and when our ordeal has passed, may we draw comfort from the hope and faith that better days may lie ahead.
We pray for all people who are whether in distress of body or spirit. We name in our hearts those who are needing us. Let them know your help and feel your presence. We bless you. Take your help.
Now, please rise on page 78 for the Baruch, the call to worship. Baruch et Adonai Amvorach, praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due. Baruch Adonai Amvorach leolam vaed. Let us praise the eternal God, to whom all praise is due, now and forever. Page 79. You are our God, the source from which life and all its blessings flow. Wherever we turn our eyes, we behold signs of your goodness and grace. The fullness of your power is disclosed to us in your guidance of our people, in your constant shaping of human destiny, and in the wondrous works of creation. Your guiding spirit is present in all your works. The harmony and grandeur of nature speak to us of you, of your infinite might and majesty. Next page. Infinite. Yes.
Laws and ethical precepts, your statutes and ordinances, and led us in the ways of righteousness, and brought us to the light of truth.
Therefore, Why isn't it?
Meditate on the Torah's teachings, finding within it inspiration and guidance for bringing life. May your love never depart from our hearts. We praise you, God. We reveal your love through our influence.
Together on top of page 81, we affirm Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the eternal is our God, the eternal God is one. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Let us praise God, who rules in glory forever and ever. You may be seated as we join the Ve'ahavta on page 82. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We continue on page 84, praying responsibly. Trust in the Eternal One with all your heart, and do not rely only on your own limited understanding.
Remember God's commandments and do them. You shall not follow only your own heart and your own eyes.
Time and again, God has redeemed us from the hand of oppressors and revived our spirits when our own strength failed us.
God's works and wonders surpass our understanding. God's gifts and blessings are without number.
We rejoice in God's guiding power. We praise and give thanks to the Eternal One. Top of page 85. The people.
Observe the Sabbath. Observing the Sabbath in every generation because of the Sabbath of God. It is a sign between God and the people.
Those who preserve Shabbat and call it a delight will rejoice. The people that hallow Shabbat delight in your goodness, for, being pleased with the seventh day, you made it the most precious of days, a day of gratitude for the work of creation. Continue on page 86. Grant.
Spread over us the shelter of your peace. God, the ashes of the Father's He is the shield of us, fortifying us against the hatred and war, against pestilence and sorrow. Remember within us the nation of your evil, and comforts us with the grace of your love. Guide our going out and coming into life and peace, this time, Lord, and forever. We praise you, God, for each other Christ.
Now, for the Amida on page 87, I ask you to please rise. If you're able to. We praise you, God of our mothers and fathers, God of Abraham, God of Sarah, God of all generations. You bestow loving kindness on all your people. You remember the devotion of those who came before us. As you guided our ancestors with love, you offer hope to us, their descendants. Your creator and helper, our guide and protector. We praise you, eternal God, shield of Abraham and help of Sarah.
Loving kindness, the endless flow of your blessings, and preserve all creation. O God, really have to faith in the people and death and love. Who is like you, Father and life. Praise God, source of eternal.
Bottom of page 89. As we become more fully aware of God's presence, we discover our life's truth in the knowledge that we can worship God in holiness only as we serve each other in love. How much we owe to the labors of others. Day by day, they endure pain and peril for our sake. Numberless gifts and blessings have been laid in our cradles as our birthright. May we then be just and great-hearted in our dealings with one another, sharing the fruits of our common labor, acknowledging that we're but stewards of whatever we possess. Help us to be among those who give generously of themselves, that others may not hunger, who dare to be bearers of light in the dark loneliness of stricken lives, who struggle and even bleed for the triumph of justice for all people. So shall we be partners in the repair of our world, for that has been our vision and goal throughout the ages.
Our God, the God of all things, grant that our worship of His God is acceptable to you. Thank God as good and His Trinity Shabat in the air of our lives. Jesus has been satisfied with His gifts of forgiveness and grateful to His grace of all things. Purify our hearts that we will serve you in truth. Inspire us to preserve Shabbat as Israel's heritage from generation to generation. May it bring rest and joy, peace and comfort, and love to all people. May it free us to worship you. We praise our God.
And you may be seated. We continue on page 92. We gratefully acknowledge that the eternal God is our creator, preserver, the rock of our life and the shield of our help. We thank God and sing praises for the gift of life itself. Our souls are ever in God's keeping. signs of our Creator's presence that we encounter every day, and for God, more.
And God's loving kindness never ceases. Therefore, do we forever put our trust in you.
Page 93. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, eternal source of peace, and enable our people Israel to be its messenger to all the world. Bless our country, they may ever be a pursuer of peace and its advocate in the Council of Nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and harmony among the inhabitants of all lands. Plant virtue in every soul, and may our love for you hallow every home and every heart. We praise you, God, giver of peace. Amen. We turn now to page 10, prior to silent meditation, for prayer of those in need of healing. Prayer invites God's presence to lift our spirits. It allows the blessing and gift of hope to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. The Shabbat, we pray especially for our president, who suffers from COVID, wishing him apparently he's getting better, but wishing him a speedy recovery. Yes, the real one. No, none of this. No. We're not talking about mental illness. We're talking about like real illness. The real president. Also pray for, Biden, yeah. We also pray for those members of our congregation, friends and relatives of members in whom we share the anxiety of their illness. Nancy Stern, Gary Keshner, Marvin Aaron, Mike Herman, Wayne Owen, Felicia Wax, Jorge Dickerman, Anita Hampshire, Jessica Harper, Roy Barker, Hector May, and Billy Montgomery. On behalf of Pat, Mike Becker, Andy Becker, Brian Becker, Mary Lou Becker, Bailey Swales, and Alvin Henley. Did you get them all? Good. And then I think you got it. And then I think on behalf of the Weekmans, Sarah Samuelson, Steve Fair, Glenn Christek, Donna Vesta, Roy Wenzel, Lenore Main, and Roseanne for sure. And then on behalf of Denise, Mrs. Dean Lanklow, Maria Morrow, her father George Dickerman, and Karen Mike Wicassa. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody else? So I will continue. We pray.
Online?
We pause now for a moment of silent prayer, using the words our hearts may prompt us, or those to be found in our prayer books on page 94. So, fantastic Torah portion, Pinchas. First tells the story about this guy who's psychotic. He sees some people doing stuff they shouldn't. He kills them. And then God thinks it's so great, gives him a covenant of peace. It's not for us. But then the Torah portion is filled with all the order of the sacrifices, all the sacrifices that you should do every month, for the holidays, for all kinds of special occasions. They're all in this Torah portion. So this is, in fact, a Torah portion that ends up being read a lot, because you not only read it when it happens this time of the year, but in traditional synagogues, you read it every Rosh Chodesh, the new month, because there's something that talks about the sacrifices on the new month. And there are something that talks about sacrifices for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur and for Passover. My bar mitzvah was at the end of Sukkot. So Pinchas was the Torah portion for my bar mitzvah. So I chanted it on the video, but just a little, not to scare if I had chanted opera, none of you will even be here, maybe under the threat. Maybe I'll be singing it in fullness. But I have something for you that I think is quite interesting. I'll admit that it's not all my research. I copied some of it from somebody else. But you need to start by understanding something. It's very, very subtle. Just as in our world, when I tell you, help me, help you, you know that this refers to a certain film. Or if I use an expression, holy mackerel, but nobody does, right? Only Robin. I'm talking about Robin from Batman and Robin, because we have a cultural milieu that when you mention anything if you share this culture. By the way, in Portuguese, Robin doesn't say holy mackerel. He says macacos me mordam. It means may monkeys bite me. And he's the only one that says that, and I don't know why. But anyway, it's macacos me mordam. Macacos me mordam. When I meet somebody who knows somebody Brazilian, I say, go and tell them macacos me mordam. He will understand exactly what we're talking about. So, you need to understand that for our ancestors, we are the people of the book, which means they knew the book. They may not have known anything else, but they definitely knew the book, and they care about the book to its minimum details. Okay, so this is the background you need to know. So I'll start with you with a basic question. Does God sin? Can God sin? No?
You said sing?
Sin, S-I-N.
No.
No?
He has.
When you're showing your Christian origins. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Numbers 28:15. It says, "There shall talk about the sacrifices. There shall be one goat as a sin offering for God, to be offered in addition to the regular burnt offering and its libation." It's talking about a monthly sacrifice that needs to be offered. All sacrifices are offered to God, but this is a sacrifice being offered for God, implying clearly that God did something that warrants atoning for. And this kind of sacrifice, by the way, is a chatat. There's different kind of sacrifices, and the chatat is when you did something bad, so it's an apology sacrifice. Okay? Yes. Interrupt me. Go ahead.
That usually infers forgiveness. So who would be?
Very good point. I'll get to it. So it has a passage in the Talmud in Chulin 60b that the answer is given by Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. It says, in the beginning of the creation, God shrunk the moon. And let me give you a summary of this Talmudic session. It says, in the beginning of Genesis, on the fourth day of creation, God made the two great lights, the great light, the sun, to rule by day, and the lesser light, the moon, to rule by night. But pay attention again. Understand how these people are looking at the text and how they are trying to derive meaning even from the minimum details. On one hand, it says they make two great lights. That means there's two lights. Both of them are great. But now, immediately it says one greater light. If there's two great lights, how can one be greater and the one be lesser? They're both great. Are you with me? Good. So what happened is, which means that at first the sun and the moon were equal. God made two great lights, one for day, one for night. But then says, right. So at first, the moon complained, can two kings wear one crown? How can both of us be ruling, God replied to the moon, you are correct, but since you complain, shrink. If you open your mouth, you always get in trouble, right? Shrink. The moon demurred. I point out to you the problem, and you cause me to shrink. So God tried to appease the moon, saying that the cycle of the festivals would be guided by her, would be measured by her. Because in fact, the Jewish calendar is mostly a lunar calendar that we define it by the moon. But the moon was still not satisfied. So God, feeling guilty, said that each new moon, Israel will bring a sin offering for me, for my sin of shrinking the moon. Nonetheless, the story doesn't end here. In some future age, because in the Bible, we always have like the big opinion, the majority opinion, the lesser opinion, but since both opinions are valid, there's always this appeasement that says, but in the Messianic era, everything's going to be made right. Like we believe that the law normally follows the house of Hillel, but the house of Shammai invariably loses. But when Messiah comes, it's going to be the opposite. So, in the end of of days, in the Messianic era, the light of the moon will once again be equal to the light of the sun. And again, and they derive this also from the prophet Isaiah, where it says in the Messianic future, in Isaiah 30:26 says, the light of the moon shall be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold like the light of the 7 days. So in the primordial past, the early beginnings, and in the ideal future, the light of the moon and the light of the sun will be equal. Are you with me so far? Are you with me so far? I told you it's subtle. At this point, however, enters the Zohar, the book of Jewish mysticism. And the Zohar takes off on this idea. The sun and the moon are not simply heavenly bodies. The Zohar sees gender as fundamental to the structure of the universe, of how the universe is made. The sun represents the masculine aspects of the universe, whereas the moon represents the feminine aspects of the universe. In the beginning, the masculine and the feminine were equal, and someday in the future, they will again become equal. But for the moment, God has shrunk the moon, diminishing the feminine voice. For this, God feels guilty. According to the mystics, the masculine and the feminine aspects in reality are out of balance. The moon, who once illuminated the world on her own, now only reflects the light of the sun. But this is temporary, they say. In the future, the moon will give off its own light, a light of its own. Obviously, this mystic teaching is not meant to be scientific reality. It's a metaphor. It's a spirit. In the spiritual reality, the masculine and the feminine will once again be balanced. Now we can understand the power of this mystical interpretation of this Talmudic passage. In the ideal beginning, the masculine and the feminine were equal, but historically, the voice of man began to dominate, and the feminine voice became secondary. Jewish tradition, like many other traditional religions, try to silence the feminine voice. The Talmud teaches, for instance, in Brachot 24a, Kol Isha Irva, the voice of a woman is sexually suggestive, and in the Orthodox world, a woman is forbidden to sing in front of a man because will arouse him. Women faded into a secondary role, no longer in the public sphere, as the moon became secondary to the sun. But yet we get to see that even in our own lifetime, this is changing. Women are taking more and more public roles in all areas of life, including Judaism. In my own class, almost half of the students were females. I heard of a story of a little kid in California who belonged to a synagogue where the rabbi was a female, the assistant rabbi was a female, the cantor was a female. So the young boy asked his mom, can a boy become a rabbi also? Okay. So, so obviously, even in the Orthodox world, we begin to see they have no real rabbis, but they already have like women who become doctors in Jewish law and can pass judgment. And there's at least one very important one in Israel. So bottom line is the voice of women is being heard, with many women becoming major teachers of Torah. The sun and the moon are becoming equal once again. And I believe that contemporary life is richer because of this. Shabbat Shalom. Complaints, remarks, comments? Yes, sir.
Did the ancient ones believe that the moon provided its own light?
Yes.
It's a great question. That I don't know. What? Okay.
Because the light that the moon reflects is that of the sun.
Obviously. But, I mean, what I know is like this. There is a whole moon thing in Judaism that is not necessarily made very, very clear. But for instance, if you're a desert people and you walk at night, first of all, if you're a desert people, you want to move from point A to point B. You don't go during the day, too hot. You need to go at night. And at night, there are better days and worse days when the moon is full, so you can walk by the light of the moon. The moon, the archetype of the moon creates the great Mosaic revolution of a God that is not tied to a place, but a God that travels with you. Because the moon travels with you. Whereas, for instance, if your God is associated with the stars, there are certain stars you see in this part of the world, but you don't see in another part of the world. So you say, oh, look, it's different, but the moon is the one that's everywhere. So creates the prototype of a God that could be everywhere. And then this whole deal with it's not clear until you point out, and then you realize that there's this whole obsession with horns. There's the shofar, there's the altar had horns. If you go to a city of refuge, you have to hold the horn of the altar so people can kill you. It's a whole big deal with horns. And the horn is what the moon does, either when it's beginning, now it's like this, or when it's ending, it's like this. You know, it's crescent and yeah. But do they think the moon gave its own light? Maybe, but still, I would say probably yes, because that's why it talks about a greater light and a lesser light. So yes, but as I'm thinking about this.
So apparently it took the mystics to figure out that the light was all coming from the sun.
No, it took the guy who wrote the text, part of that part of the text, I don't think I mean, what they, but you understand what I want also always trying to point out is how people who don't have that much stuff in writing, they only have that, how they take the text and they look at it and they look at it, you know, how long would it take us if you look at the Bible and God created two big lights, the bigger light, the two big lights, the big light for this and the lesser light for that. And you see there is a gap here. You know, the first verse don't connect to the second verse. They don't make sense. And then there's the desire that in everything there is a lesson. And if you don't understand, it's not because the text makes no sense, because you make no sense, because you need to think more. And in this text, see how they take then first they take from Numbers, then from Genesis, and then from Isaiah. You know, and again, for us it would be almost impossible to do that because we don't have this mastery, because we have masters other stuff as well. But this is what they knew. And they obviously add stuff. Well, I could give you an alternative version, which is about how Kabbalah was created and what's the connection with opium, with all that. But that's for another day. And opium, not only opium, but Denise stealing spoons from a hotel. Because it's all happened in Avila. Anyway, anybody else? No? Questions, complaints, remarks? No? Good.
Can you speak up, please?
No. He said something about guilt, and reading one of the texts, that God is so great that he doesn't feel guilt. And that's what I had a question about is
I mean, I don't think anywhere you find it.
well, that's my question, is how do you infer that God is guilty when he's not supposed to feel guilt? He's supposed to be such a great being. How is he guilty?
Well, I think you also need to make a distinction between sin and guilt.
Correct.
I think two different things.
Right. That's a good point.
Maybe it's just
Guilt is the feeling associated with sin.
But it is a
It
separate.
is a feeling, but it isn't the sin.
Right, it's a separate thing.
you know, everybody feels guilt. when you say,
Well, it depends.
I can say it all the time, you know. I'm not gonna feel guilty.
Yeah, we saw that during last time. Right? There ain't no guilt some places. Wait a minute. No, he's not coming.
It's on the whole different meaning.
Look, I think, what makes Judaism different. It's the ability to question everything. So I think there's very, very few true imperatives, or put different, even if there are imperatives, that doesn't mean you are not allowed to question it. And if you look at all the texts and stuff like that, you realize that it's a legitimate question. There is a mistake, there's a break in the text. Well, I mean, I can give you the scientific version. The scientific version is the Bible is a book put together by committee. So that, a camel is a horse put together by committee. So they put it together. The Bible has two stories of creation. First chapter of Genesis has absolutely nothing to do with the second chapter of Genesis, but they come together. If you're not paying attention, you think they're one. But why the story repeats itself, and why is it different? Why this one is different from this one? Well, obviously, if it was the same, it wouldn't repeat. But right. So, and then you have people who look at the text saying, "This is it. This is what my teacher called the ur text, the source of everything. How do I derive meaning from this?" And I managed to go from the idea of God committing a sin to speaking about the reality of how men and women should be equal, or not equal, different but with equal voices. So, right, exactly. That's
We should all be able to maintain two opposing thoughts at the same time.
right. Good. On this happy note, we will turn to page 367, 8, or something. No, so if I ask you to please rise, hang in there, man. Hang there. Let me find my Kaddish list. Be quiet, John. Okay, that's what I want. Okay, good. So, עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו. Let us.
We offer praise unto you, who spread out the heavens and established the earth. Your glory is revealed in the heavens above, and your greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, who is never.
We bow our heads in reverence before the eternal one, source of all life. May the time not be there.
All people shall be guided by the teaching. For corruption and evil shall be great, purity and goodness. Superstition shall be martyred and slain one, our dogs and blind the other. Then all will know shall know that to you alone every knee shall bow, and every voice is praised. And all created in your image recognize that we are brothers and sisters. So that one spirit and one harmony, we are united. Then shall remain the songs of the words
On the day the eternal shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, the 6 million who perished in the Shoah, and those of every race, nation, and faith whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. This Shabbat will have at least one Shiva for Davina Beth Skoken, who's a young woman that shows my age, who I buried yesterday. She was a woman who I had done a funeral for the family, but this woman was severely autistic, and her whole life was, it's a very sad story, whole family dynamic. But I just mentioned there's somebody who I just did funeral for, and I'm doubt anybody saying Kaddish for her, so I figure it should be appropriate to do so. Then we also obviously remember everyone still dying around the world on account of COVID, and people still dying in Ukraine or the war. Anybody else has a Shiva, 7-day mourning period. You know? As far as Shloshim, a 30-day mourning period. And as far as Yortzeit, Temple Israel has only one. It's Mark Bergerson, who's a cousin, Dr. Andrew. Anybody else has a Yortzeit? Spartans who we now remember have entered into the peace of life eternal. They still live on earth in the acts of goodness they perform in the hearts of those who cherish their memory. May the beauty of their lives abide among us, the loving benediction. And now we turn to page 375, the ancient words of the Kaddish. Itkadal ve'itkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, bechai yechon u'v'yom echon, u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Itbarach ve'ishtabach ve'itpa'ar ve'itromam ve'itnaseh ve'itadar ve'itale ve'italal shmei dekudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata ve'shirata tushbechata ve'nechemata da'amiram be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya ve'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'imru amen. Osei shalom bimbromad. Uya se shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Israel, ve'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort all who are bereaved among us, and let us say amen. May be seated. Thank you, Theo, for the music. Good job as always. Anybody else? On August 12th, we have a potluck. We call the, no? You're looking at.
It's not potluck, I bring in all of it.
You mean you don't want anybody?
We'll talk.
Oh, there'll be food. That's the important part.
The question is, there will be people, right?
Let's make sure there'll be people. Otherwise, make care packages and you can send to Panama, to everybody. Should also know that one of my most amazing students, which is Edgar from Colombia, previously had been a priest, this week he was in the Venice ghetto. And while he was at the ghetto, he was texting and sending me pictures. That was very cute. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the service. Understandable, which is nice. I like that. We'll use the speakers again. Thank you, Theo. Beautiful music as usual. Thank you for here we go.
After concluding hymn and the final benediction, we may engage once again in the traditional Temple of Israel fight over where we're going for dinner. Now, what's our concluding hymn, Theo? 427. concluding our service, I ask God's blessings upon us. Yevarechecha Adonai v'shmerecha. May God bless us and keep us. Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'chuneka. May God look kindly on us and ever be gracious to us. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God show us tenderness and give us shalom, peace. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Marisa.
Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Hi, John. How are you feeling?
I'm mute now. Now you're good.
Wonderful. Shalom. Shabbat shalom. And Gary, I want to call you and ask you further about your discussion with Romeo. All
Oh,
right?
sure.
I will.
Anytime, John.
I will call you.
Okay.
Okay?
Did you ever?
Are you
talk-
okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
I'll call you up.